Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Corn Productions. My co-host Stacie here to talk about The Sinner, Season 4, Episode 5, titled Part 5. The episode's description reads as follows. Ambrose discovers the source of Percy's ritualistic practices and dives deeper into her past. The episode was written for television by Kate Roach, and directed by Hapa Al-Manzoor. I'm sure that's nowhere close to the actual pronunciation. But fun fact about her, she was actually the first female filmmaker in Saudi Arabia.
Oh.
Yep. The episode was originally aired on November 10th, 2021. Before going any further, I'll tell you a couple of things. One, this is not a spoiler-free podcast, so you have to watch the episode. I highly recommend you go and check it out and then come back and give us a listen. Secondly, if you're listening on one of the platforms that this podcast is now available, please subscribe. You can also head over to my YouTube channel, Corn Productions, where additional content can be discovered. All right, shout-outs this week. Ashley Wright.
All right.
Ashley Wright commented on the Episode 3 podcast saying that it was a great show, and of course he loves listening to us. So
he must.
Thank you. Yes, he must. There's about 5 days worth of content, and I believe that he's listened to a lot of it. At least 3 days worth of it, over time, of course. Ashley Wright has a new video series on his YouTube channel related to the Euro Championship. That's soccer. I'm going to let him explain in his video, so there's a link to that video if you're interested in European soccer. Go check it out, or just soccer in general.
I'm pretty sure they call it football.
It is called football in that area, but football translates to basically soccer here in the U.S.
Right. But, we do have listeners not in the U.S. as well.
Okay, fair enough. And
I think they take offense to the word soccer.
Do they?
I think so.
Okay. Well, if I offended anybody, please let me know, and I'll refrain from doing that in the future. All right.
Okay, yeah.
So, your thoughts this week about this week's episode?
Part 5.
Yes.
So, as I've been saying the last couple weeks is my brain doesn't remember, how this story's cut into parts.
Yeah.
So, this episode is very focused.
Yes.
So it's entirely focused around the character of M and her history with Percy, and we learn specifically about all of these artifacts. So that whole part of the puzzle is explained here.
Yep.
We also get some insight onto the bigger picture of what's going on with the Muldoon family.
Yep.
In both directions that story's going, we get some little tidbits here. Yeah, it feels a little slow to me.
Yeah.
I feel like
it is definitely a slower paced episode.
We got so much of the story, thrown at us quicker than I expected it to be in the first, half of the season. And now that we're in the back half of the season, I feel like we're just going at a turtle's pace to really, mold around all of these little things we've already learned and really, explore them in way more detail than I thought we were going to, having seen this series once.
Right.
I don't know if I'm explaining myself right. But basically how I've said it before, it's all playing out differently than I remember it playing out. It's the same story, obviously, but the pacing and the what's in which episode just feels kind of weird.
Basically,
pulling it apart like this.
The episode structures, the season structure seems to be focused on eliminating one suspect every episode.
Yeah.
The second episode was about CJ, and then the third episode, I forgot who we were eliminating that week, but the fourth episode was more about, I don't remember, what was the fourth episode? It was about Colin. Last week was about Colin. And basically we were eliminating him as a suspect.
But I don't know if anywhere along the line we've actually eliminated anybody.
Okay.
We explain their stories, right? As we go through the episodes. But also, what are we even looking for at this point?
Right.
Right? We know nobody killed her.
Right.
We're not looking for a killer. He's just looking for answers of what was going on in her life.
Yeah.
And stumbles upon all these other secrets while he's doing it.
He's basically obsessed with the why. Why did Percy kill herself?
Right. So it's hard to be who's a suspect when, what's the crime?
The crime, I guess, would be who caused Percy to kill herself is basically the crime, I guess. So this episode is going to be kind of difficult for me to talk about because it delves into a certain branch of spirituality, and I'm not totally equipped to talk about some of the subjects that we're talking about in this episode.
After watching the episode, I'm not sure what language to use, how
Right.
to describe what's happening. I don't really understand much about this.
Yeah.
And like I was saying, even watching it, I'm like, I don't know what they're even talking about or what they're saying.
It feels like for me to understand what they're talking about, I would have to go and experience it.
Oh, you mean like how she told Harry?
Basically. And I'm
not going to do that.
I'm ill-equipped to do that for this podcast, unfortunately. I don't have enough time for that. But,
okay.
All right,
so we don't need to find you a expert in, I don't even know what to call it, whatever the heck M is studying here.
Right. Yeah, I don't even know what this is exactly. We don't get like a label or anything like that. Not in this.
Well, there was the book.
Right.
Something goddess. See, I don't even remember.
Okay. So let's dive into this thing. Unless you have more to say.
One thing I want to bring up is that we only have one new character introduced this episode, because of course we go through our cast as we meet them. And it's played by... Do you know who we met this episode?
I forgot.
We met Taylor Olson this episode.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah. I forgot that, he was in this episode.
He was in this episode playing Patrick, who we didn't know until this episode works with M at the dock place, which we got official name of what that's called, which is somewhere in my notes, so I'll bring that up when we get to it. I think it's right near the beginning, but otherwise we've got the same cast of characters. We've got all the Muldoons and the Lambs in this episode. We get Brandon in this episode, and M plays a big part. Not in this episode are any of the police. Raskin's not in this episode. Officer Josh is not in this episode. Right. We're gonna meet more police next week.
Right. Yes.
No police presence in this episode. It's very focused on Harry's doing his own thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not in a police investigation at the moment. We're in Harry's spiritual exploration is where we're at in this episode.
Mm-hmm. All right. So,
and notably our last appearance, I believe, of Sonia.
It is.
Yeah. Last time we're going to see Jessica Hecht.
Yep. She exits stage left after this episode.
All right.
And she only appears in exactly one scene. So we begin the episode where we left off with Ambrose discovering the hut and a rock with blood on it. And then we cut to the docks where Ambrose encounters a smoking Meg who tells him he didn't see anything. Unless he wants one, in which case he absolutely did see something.
Yeah, apparently she quit smoking 30 years ago and doesn't want her kids to know she's smoking again.
So Meg asked him if he found anything, and he actually found a crest on the boat, I guess.
Actually,
it's at the hut.
He shows her a picture of a family crest, and he took this picture on that little, what was it called? Something point?
I forgot.
Where the hut and the altar and all the artifacts. Remember, there was dozens of little artifacts spread throughout there. Like, this place is kind of creepy. It'd be pretty creepy to come upon that. Like, right? To just be walking and be like, oh, look, here's a thing. Oh, wait, here's like some really weird looking stuff happening.
Right.
So apparently somewhere there he took this picture of this crest, which has something to do with a boat.
Right. Yeah, I didn't fully get it. And by the way, if I stumbled upon this place with all these objects on it, I would fear that I was about to get murdered by somebody.
Yeah, it feels like we're like walking into the Blair Witch or something.
Right, exactly. So
Meg didn't recognize it, but she knew it was a family's crest and that you'd expect to see it on a boat, right? So she told him to check with the harbor master's office. Okay, so that's where M works, the harbor master's office. I've always just called it like the dock office.
Right.
But apparently it's a very official thing. That's the harbor master there.
So Meg suspects that this has something to do with Percy. He's going to go investigate, and Meg decides to come along. And, at the moment, they are friends once again.
A little bit.
Yeah, a little bit tense friends.
He doesn't want her to go.
Right.
And she's like, I'm coming. I'm part of this investigation now. Deal with it.
So we go to the harbor master's office where they run into Mike, who says nothing to them. They just blows them straight off.
He is there complaining about Brandon to Patrick, again played by Tyler Olson, which we've talked about on our channel before. He's on King and Pawn. I think he actually runs that show or writes for the show or does something for that show.
He's a creative force behind the show.
With Reed Price. He is in Don, Her Dad, and the Tractor, which we covered. Yep. He does stuff with the Trailer Park Boys. He's in Halloween Party, which I recently saw that film. It is readily available. Go watch it. It's a fun little horror movie, and we're going to be covering it in October.
Yep. we're going to record it well before October, but it'll drop in October for Halloween month.
And Bob Mann was talking very highly about Taylor. I guess they've done a lot of work together over the years.
Including a movie that he directed, his film directorial debut, The Bone Cage, or I think it was just Bone Cage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He has 73 actor credits, 22 writer credits, 20 director credits, and 34 producer credits.
Basically, this is a busy beaver.
A very busy man, Taylor Olson.
Patrick says, so he starts snooping around M's desk and is touching a medicine bottle, presumably to get the address off of it. And Patrick,
I didn't pick up on that. Yeah. Okay, I was questioning, like, how does he know where she lives?
Right.
Got you.
So Patrick says that M is weird about people touching her stuff, and my question is, isn't everybody kind of weird about that?
Like, should you go and just touch somebody's prescription bottle?
Right. It was a little bit weird, but Harry then artfully ditches a very confused Meg.
So before that, he notices on her desk the symbol. Mm-hmm. It was like a hanging pendant thing, and it's the same symbol that was at the altar, and that is the one of the serpent that's like eating its own tail.
Yes, yep.
So he saw that at the hut place, in a bigger version. So he knows now that M has something to do with this.
And Ambrose uses GPS, presumably the address off the bottle, and finds M's house. He sneaks around and ends up breaking in. Harry finds some books on spirituality and some notes that are related to Percy. Percy, I guess, it was a session notes about Percy.
Right, it was a journal with like stuff about Percy in it. So obviously he's on the right track. This has something to do with Percy. And then on the desk, he sees inscribed, scribbled in the desk, the phrase, "Free the bone from the flesh."
Yeah, that sounds ominous.
It sounds pretty creepy to me.
Yeah.
Is this, I don't know, is this spirituality or a cult or like
a serial killer?
Serial killer, right? Like I don't know. This is something here.
So she ends up coming home, and Ambrose sneaks out, though apparently not good enough, because when he goes home, he encounters M, and she is miffed that he has the objects that he has. He points out that they are actually evidence, as they were at the scene of the crime when Percy jumped. And I guess it's still evidence, even though we pretty much know that what happened to her. Yeah,
I mean, it's evidence for him, right? But remember, he's not on any official investigation anymore. Mm-hmm. He just, he's like, yeah, they're mine now. And she's like, those aren't yours.
And he wants to know more about Percy, and she's like, oh, I thought we were just playing a game of breaking into each other's houses. And he says he's found the hut and a rock with blood on it, and she basically threatens him that if he shows up at her house again, he's going to shoot her, or she's going to shoot him, rather. And he threatens her back.
Yeah, he basically tells her, like, how suspicious it is that she's not cooperating. And then, you know what? Knowing her part in all this, I really feel like she should be more cooperative at this point. Mm-hmm. The fact that she's being so standoffish and uncooperative, and that earlier she said she didn't even, like, really know Percy, it's weird to me.
I think maybe she's more worried about the Muldoons than she is worried about the cops. She doesn't want this to circulate back to the Muldoons, which, you know, Raskin just loves to talk to the Muldoons, so he's not like exactly a safe source of information. So maybe she assumes that Ambrose is in the same boat, that he's basically just going to reveal anything that he learns and run it back to the Muldoons. So maybe that's the reason for her reluctance to talk. But he ends up basically threatening to get, basically he puts pressure on her, and he gives her the opportunity to set him straight, saying, hey, like, I think you're a suspect, but maybe you can make me think otherwise.
Yeah, and then we start with the flashbacks.
Yep.
So, again, this episode very heavy on flashbacks, where we're going back and learning about Percy's life. And these flashbacks are all from M's perspective. Mm-hmm. And we start with, before they even really knew each other, we see Percy working on the docks. And M says that 2 years ago, she became a totally different person.
Right. So that's what where the major event happened in Percy's life to set her off on this course.
Right.
Which makes that about 2 years ago. She begins to talk about how she ended up developing a relationship with Percy. She sought her for help, and we see the flashback where she wants to be taught the practices that M is doing. She feels she needs something like that in her life because she hasn't slept in 2 years.
Yeah, and basically what M's doing is all about embracing nature.
Mm-hmm.
And also, there was this whole discussion about how that also means facing death, which is weird.
Yeah, it would have been nice to know more about this, but then again, we probably don't have that time to teach an entire religion.
Yeah.
But yeah, her lessons begin. We see some in flashback. Initially, it seems like it doesn't seem to be working, but eventually, Percy ends up feeling something. She ends up crying. And yeah.
So we learned they worked together for a couple of months at this. And this is after the flashbacks we already saw of Percy learning religion from her uncle. So this is Percy's next step, is, working with M. And this is after she came back from her time on the mainland.
Right.
So this is after when she came back. She's heavily into alcohol and drugs, and M's trying to help her repath her life,
and more
whatever.
Importantly, she's trying to help herself. She's trying to get through this somehow.
Right. Like she's trying different things, right?
Her attempts with Colin didn't work out.
Yeah, her running away to the mainland didn't help.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is her latest endeavor to try and find peace with herself for this thing that happened 2 years ago that as an audience we don't know what that thing is yet.
Right.
Harry asks M about the free the bone from the flesh. Again, that's pretty creepy. M says she can't talk about her sessions with Percy because they're personal to Percy. Basically, she's claiming, some sort of almost confidentiality here.
Right. And Ambrose keeps pushing her, and she basically says that the only way that M can trust him is if Harry does exactly what Percy ended up doing, and he ends up agreeing to that. And she says something about it could involve pain, and we already kind of know how much he likes pain.
Right.
But she says that they will need to humble themselves, and they begin right away.
Yeah.
So she takes Ambrose to some kind of body of water.
To the water. Now, this is the water behind his house that he's staying in, where we saw that group of women engaging in whatever they were doing, which was part of this.
Right. Some people commented that they didn't feel like that was ever explained, that was never brought back to. But to me, it seems pretty obvious that this connects to that.
Right. They were all participating in this. Remember when we go to that hut, there's dozens of little piles. So those all represent a different woman that's part of this circle that M is part of. And
not that I wanted to see this or anything, but why isn't Ambrose naked?
Well, yeah. I mean, maybe that's just not important.
Yeah, okay. So maybe they just wanted to be naked.
I don't know.
Whatever, no judgments. So, yeah, she says the water is 42 degrees, that it'll feel like he can't breathe, to not fight that, and he has to be fully submerged. So he goes out into the water, the freezing cold water.
She thinks he's going to quit at this point.
Right, yeah. But he eventually ends up submerging himself, and we cross-cut between Ambrose doing this and Percy doing it as well.
Right, we're going back and forth between everything Harry's learning now and when Percy did it herself.
Right.
Except they don't have months to do this. They're doing this all over one night, which took Percy months to do.
Well, I'm actually kind of curious, how long of a time period is this? Is it just the one night?
Or... It looked like one night to me.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, maybe it's a few nights, but it's not months.
Right, no, definitely not. So she says the tightness in his chest is his pride. We let our ego control us, and she declares him not ready. Harry continues to do the whole dunking in the water thing, and he asks if she enjoys this. She says, honestly, no. Eventually, he's on the beach. She's telling him to stay with whatever's going on with him. He's writhing around and moaning.
Yeah, he's sounding an awful lot like those women.
Right. And tells him to breathe. And I guess he gets the hang of it, because the next thing you know, we're in the hut. Harry is now dressed and dry. M says that after a couple of months of working with her, she was still blocked. So she had her pick objects.
5 objects, each representing a different relationship that was holding her back. And these objects were going to help her release that energy.
Mm-hmm. One was for CJ, who she intended to apologize to.
Right, and the one that for him, obviously we know this already, it was the little Buddha statue.
Right. And but she just ended up making his life worse.
Yeah, and we flash back to that first night that she came to visit him during the night, which we've seen part of that night before. And now she stayed the night, and we're seeing when she's like waking up to leave in the morning. And Stephanie, CJ's mom, is the one who found her there and freaked out. We've heard about this event.
Yes.
This is the first time we're seeing it.
Right. And notably, right now, we don't know why she doesn't like her hanging with CJ. Right. But we will eventually, and it makes complete sense why she's angry.
Right, and why, you know, this particular whole interaction is really upsetting Percy.
Right.
Because, yeah, maybe she didn't make the best choices here.
No. So we end up seeing a scene where she walks in on her father, who's clearly doing some kind of drugs. I guess is heroin.
This is the cigarette case artifact. So that was her father's, and we see that it was the case that he kept his drugs in. Gotcha. And yeah, she walked in on him, and it was a very uncomfortable looking moment in their lives.
So she ends up saying that, you know, they avoided each other for a couple of days, and then he comes to her knocking on her door, and he ends up giving her some money because he saw that she was looking at apartments in Portland, which I guess is the mainland. Right. And he basically gives her a bunch of money to go and get an apartment.
Yeah, now this is the money when she went, so she first left, remember the first night she left, she went to her biological mother and spent the night with her, and the mom saw a wad of cash Percy had, and we were led to kind of think, oh, something bad's happening. She has this wad of money. Well, here's where she got the wad of money. Her dad gave it to her. He's trying to help her escape. He says, you don't want to stay here. You're going to end up just like me. So he's the one who, his way of helping her was like, just go away. Leave this behind you. Forget about what happened. Forget about us and go live your life.
And that's not unreasonable. I think what he was trying to do is admirable. But basically, he says that she initially doesn't want to take the money, but he's like, let me do this one thing for you. And, you know, we get the sense, really, that when it comes down to, Sean is kind of a weak person.
Sure he is.
You know, he has never really done anything for Percy. He's kind of basically done the bidding of Meg and everybody else in the family. And we see him constantly getting bullied by Colin, for instance. He never really stands up for them. It seems like he doesn't really want to do anything that he's actually doing. Yeah. He's just pushed in
and
those
he doesn't want to help himself, but he does want to help his daughter. He wants to help Percy escape the life that they have.
And by the way, this is a fantastic scene. I love this scene between the two of them.
And so we see that the reason that, you know, Percy has an artifact for him, the reason this is holding her back, is she feels guilty for leaving him. So she didn't want to leave the island. She did leave the island. We know it only lasted 3 months, but in that moment, she thinks she's leaving for good, right? But she didn't want to leave him behind because she was scared that when she leaves, he's going to get worse. There's going to be no one there to help him.
He's just going to die.
She's abandoning him, basically.
Overdose,
Yeah.
But, I mean, clearly he doesn't want to help himself.
And we also, in this flashback, got references to that night, 2 years ago.
Right.
Which is the night he got hurt.
Right.
Which is when he got addicted to pain meds, which led to all these other drugs. So she makes allusions to that, like, it's my fault that you're addicted to drugs because of that night. Right. And if you didn't get hurt, then none of this would have happened. So it's all about this guilt that she feels over that night, which, of course, is where we're leading to with the story, which I'm not going to spoil that right here. But
so we next see Meg and Percy together, and they get into some kind of argument upon her return. She doesn't want the business that Meg is trying to give, you know, like basically hand over to her. Right. So this is flashing back to the night that Meg brought her home. So the 3 months have passed. Leaving didn't work. And this is related to the artifact of the rope. And if we recall, Meg had said, yeah, I gave her that rope. It was just a piece of garbage. I don't know what she wanted it for. Well, Percy kept that rope to represent Meg. And so Meg's advice to Percy to deal with her, whatever's holding her back, is just lose yourself in your work. That's what our family does. We just work ourselves to death. So if you work really hard, you're just going to forget about your problems. Right. That's her answer. And Percy tells her, she says, I don't want the business. Right. I don't want this life. And of course, Meg's not hearing any of that. Because she never does. She doesn't hear anything.
She's just like, of course you're going to inherit the business. You're the only one left. Like, you have to have the business. Like, there's no discussion here. It's yours.
I'm kind of confused.
You're not allowed to leave.
How much older is Colin over Percy?
I would guess somewhere between 10 and 15 years.
Is that enough of a difference that we couldn't just give the business to Colin?
Well, I think the idea is that she said there's no one left after Colin.
Okay, but they're not. It's not like Colin's ancient.
Right.
He's got plenty of time left.
Right.
And he could have kids and then.
But he hasn't had kids, I guess, is where we're at.
Okay.
Is she's the one that's going to inherit it after the boys.
Gotcha.
And she don't want it.
So, then we see a scene between Colin and Meg, who's the next person on this list. He goes to apologize for the way that she acted that we saw characterized in the previous episode.
So, the artifact that's for Colin, Harry asked, the star is for Colin because it came from Colin's boat.
Right.
And Meg said, no, this one was Colin's. It's a cross necklace. And I don't even remember seeing that necklace before, but apparently that was part of this. So that was Colin's artifact. And, so Percy's apologizing to him for abandoning their religious lessons.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we saw this day before as well in a different flashback, but from a different perspective or a different part of this conversation.
Right. And she basically, says that it just wasn't working for me. And Colin is basically like, well, you never really tried. You didn't give it a chance. And the conversation turns heated really quick. Basically, we get allusions to Percy having done something.
We specifically hear someone died.
Right. And he basically is like, well, we have to clean up your crap. We all experience judgment. Get over whatever this is and, get on with your life, basically. And he ends up closing the door on her. So he's not exactly very helpful in the scene. And he basically just seems to wash his hands of her, really, when it seems to me in this scene, he's just, done helping her at this point.
So these 4 people are all people that have either tried to help her or that she's, in CJ's case, he wasn't trying to help her, but she was leaning to him, right. to try and get over what's bothering her. And in all cases, none of their approaches helped.
Right.
So her next person to go to is M, and that's what she's currently doing with these artifacts, is this is her next step in her journey of trying to figure this out.
So M, in the flashbacks, gives her the star medallion thing, and says that, okay, well, what about this? And Percy is much more reluctant to deal with this issue, and she just basically starts freaking out, squeezing the medallion until her hands start bleeding, despite M begging her to stop. She pushes M and then runs off, and this is the end of M helping her, unfortunately.
Right. Now, so with the star, we see flashbacks. We see flashbacks to the club and the man in the black hoodie that was after her in Portland. Mm-hmm. And she told M that somebody died. Right. Which is how M's now telling Harry about this, but she never told M who that person was. But this star is for that situation, right? So it's either who's this man that she's flashing back to. We don't know who the star's for. Right. These all represent people, and it's kind of a mystery who the star's for. Now,
I would argue that the star was the most important thing.
Of course it was.
That everything else, it would have been nice if she could have made peace with all this other stuff, but if she doesn't do it with the star, then none of it matters.
Right. But as the story goes, we don't know still who the star represents. Right. We see a flash during this of a person hitting Sean against the side of the boat, and we see the star knocking off. We see the star in flashback. Right. The moment it came off of the boat. We don't, of course, know what that is alluding to, but we see Sean getting hit and knocking the star off of the boat. And then we see a body on a shore. Right. Which is great looking at this, knowing where we end up. Like, we're seeing it all. It's all right here.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's just in these little flashback moments. Mm-hmm. I'm even going to say this is like Percy's direct perspective, because nobody else here knows this stuff. So this isn't anybody telling a story. Mm-hmm. This is us literally seeing little bits of what happened. What is the history of the star? So
M never learned who this person was that ended up dying. Doesn't know the story behind it. Never saw Valerie written on the back of the star.
Right. So she concludes that Percy must have written that after that night that she ran off.
M asks if you can push someone to suicide. Harry says you can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved. That's true. And she asks him, then why are you still here? Okay. What does she mean by this question? Is she asking, the investigation is over, so why are you still here? Or why have you not killed yourself yet?
I took it as, why are you investigating?
Okay.
You're trying to save Percy's soul.
Right.
But she didn't want to be saved, so what are you doing?
Right. I was wondering if she picked up on the fact that Harry was in fact suicidal.
I don't think that's what she meant.
I mean, yeah, basically, like, well, why didn't you kill yourself yet? Like, it's not a very nice question.
No, but clearly M is blaming herself for Percy's suicide.
Okay.
Right? She's like, can you drive someone to suicide? Like, I pushed her too hard, making her face her demons, and she killed herself because of it.
That, in my mind, was the only path to healing. That, unfortunately, was a bridge she could never get across.
Yeah.
So, no, she is not responsible.
I mean, M still doesn't know what the issue was.
Right.
But she's like, I made her face it, and then she killed herself. So, this is now M's baggage.
Right.
Of feeling responsible for someone's death.
I would say that M is the least culpable of all the possible people.
Sure, but yeah, I understand why she feels guilt.
Yeah, sure, absolutely, but she's not the reason why that happened, obviously. And I guess CJ is probably the least culpable.
Yeah, because he don't even know what the heck's going on.
Right, yeah.
He's totally clueless.
Right. So we see Harry by himself talking to hallucination Percy. He's vulnerable. He's crying. She tells him that she wishes he could let go of Jamie, Sonia, and his mother.
Yeah, basically people
who left him.
People he's killed.
Right.
Whose death he's responsible for, and people he's pushed away.
Right.
All the people in his life who he regrets how their situations ended up. And, hallucination Percy specifically says we're both guilty.
Mm-hmm.
Like, basically meaning we've both caused death.
Mm-hmm.
Because Harry killed Jamie.
Right.
Jamie was a killer.
Yes.
It wasn't like he didn't need to die.
Right.
But Harry feels guilt over actually killing him.
Right. He specifically says he killed somebody who didn't need to die.
Right.
Basically.
Like, I could have stopped him without killing him. But, I mean, I don't remember those scenes exactly, but it's self-defense, right?
Right.
Like, he was literally saving himself and Sonia.
Vague details at best on what happened there. I don't really remember. I would have to go back and watch those scenes. But she says, if he doesn't stop, he will end up like her. And he suggests maybe that's what he deserves. And she's like, nobody deserves that.
Yeah, so he's contemplating suicide again at this point.
Because remember, this is him talking to himself.
And remember, he just went through this whole, like, weird water thing and dealt with whatever the heck that was.
Right.
So he's going through stuff.
Right, yeah. So he wakes up the next morning. He calls Sonia and says that he slept for the first time in a while. So his insomnia thing seems to be better. So whatever he went through seems to be helping him a little bit. But they have a awkward conversation. She ends up revealing that what was stolen was a stack of photographs.
Right, from the night that their rental house was broken into. She realized that the prints that she had the prints she had made of some of the photos she took on the island were taken. So even though she's like not a fan of Harry right now and doesn't want to talk to him, she basically hangs up on him. She tells him, I'm going to send you the digital copies of the photo because it might help your investigation. So she's still trying to be helpful, even though she's like kind of done with him at this moment.
And it's not really clear when the series ends that they're ever going to reconnect, even though by the end of this, I think Harry is in a better place. But yeah, I mean, it seems like he wants to say more during this conversation.
Yeah, like, she's like, if there's nothing else, I'm going to go. And he's like, okay.
But it seems like he wants to say
And then
something.
They hung up.
Right.
Like, I was like, no, you guys talk.
Right.
Like, come on.
Right.
And they're both, like, just failing at communication here.
Yes. And like we said, this is the last we're going to see of Jennifer Hetch. In this series, anyway. She's
Jessica
Hetch. And the last time that I'm going to do that. So he looks through the pics and finds a boat. And he ends up a knock at the door ends up revealing Meg, who's annoyed with him. What else is new?
So Meg is mad and says, what were you doing with that witch woman?
Mm-hmm. It's interesting that she has that opinion of her because I didn't know that she would know anything about what M does.
Well, don't we know that some of her friends are involved in that circle?
I guess so.
Like, we've met friends of hers that are the women Harry saw.
Mm-hmm.
So Meg at least has a peripheral understanding that this is happening in her town.
Right.
And she knows people involved in it, and she's friendly with them.
So he doesn't think that she did anything to hurt Percy. And she basically is like, well, why do you believe that? Like,
yeah, so she thinks M did something.
Mm-hmm.
Especially, I think, after the way that Harry left the boathouse.
Right.
He knew that she went to Meg. He went to M's house.
Right. And then Meg ended up talking to M herself, and of course did not get anywhere with that conversation.
Right. So he explains the reason he left her at the Dockmaster was because he needed to talk to M one-on-one. We knew right off the bat he didn't want Meg helping with this investigation.
Right.
So he was quick to leave her behind,
right.
anyways.
Yep.
And she's just not happy about any of this. She wants to be the only one knowing what's going on.
Ditched her like a bad prom date.
He says that he asks if she knows about the guilt that Percy was carrying around, and tells Meg that Percy felt responsible for someone's death and was asking, who is that? Who's, like, did somebody in her life die recently?
Right.
And Meg shuts him down. She's like, no, nobody. You're going down the wrong path.
He's very much not, though. He's very much on the right path, and she knows that.
She knows that.
Yeah.
But she's realized maybe she made a mistake asking him to keep investigating.
Right. Well, it's about time that you made that realization. So she threatens to take this to Lou, who we're still not going to see, but he shows her a pic of the boat. And...
So this is one of the pictures that Sonia sent him.
Yeah.
One of the pictures she took, because remember when she was on the island, well, Harry's out doing this investigation this whole time he's been there. She's out taking pictures of the island.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the pictures, it's of two boats pulled close together.
And she identifies one of them as Brandon's. So they go back to the harbor to wait for Brandon's boat to come back.
Right, because they want to ask him, like, who's this other boat? What is this? Is there some reason somebody would want to steal this photograph?
Mm-hmm. Meg tells him that she doesn't blame him for not trusting her. She wasn't completely honest with him about anything, really. That this is a small town, that when they smile at you, they don't wish you the best. Which is why she became a very private person. And Ambrose relates to this little bit of information.
So they're friends again.
Yes, for the time being. Okay, so the boat starts coming back. It's coming back at a weird angle.
Yeah, and Meg notices there's a problem.
Yeah.
There's nobody behind the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
So she runs towards the boat.
It ends up crashing into the dock.
Yeah.
They end up investigating the boat.
No one's on board.
Right.
It's on autopilot.
But there's like a speaker playing something.
Yeah, there was like a recording playing on a speaker, which was weird.
Right.
And Harry tells her, look for anything out of place.
She ends up finding a line or something like that.
First thing she notices that the traps that are on board are yellow, which means those are the lamb's traps.
Okay.
So Brandon was stealing the lamb's traps.
Why?
To stop them from fishing.
Okay, but is this on behalf of the Muldoons, or is he doing this for himself for some strange reason?
I'm not sure.
Does he work for the Muldoons?
He does work for the Muldoons.
Did he work for the Muldoons? As we'll soon see.
He does work for them. I don't think he has his own fishing license.
Right,
he works under one of their permits.
Okay.
And Percy had even suggested, Brandon can take over the company.
Right.
So yeah, I'm pretty sure that the whole Kaiser family works for the Muldoon family.
Gotcha.
They don't have their own business.
So she ends up pulling up a line.
Yeah, so she said something's wrong with, like, the wench. I think that's what it's called.
Mm-hmm.
I might be making that up, but, like, the thing where you pull up the stuff from under the water.
Right. I have absolutely no idea.
So the thing that you, like, pull up the traps with, right?
Okay.
Or something like that.
Yeah.
She's like, this is odd, and he wouldn't have left it like this, and I'm not sure what exactly was odd about it, but she saw something weird, and she starts winding up this wench, and we notice there's a foot coming up out of the water, a human foot.
Yes.
There's a body hanging from this wench.
That is not a very good sign.
And at this point, I'm thinking, call for help?
Right.
Get some witnesses over here. Like, you're at the dock. It's just the two of them on this boat. Maybe get the dockmaster involved. Like, somebody needs to witness you pulling a body out of the water. So it's not just like, here's your story of what happened.
Right. Oh, by the way, you two are now accused of murdering this person.
Yeah, like, we should have maybe gathered some more people in this moment. But instead of that, Harry's like, keep going. Keep pulling it up.
Right. And, of course, it turns out to be Brandon's dead body. He's looking very, very dead. He's very, very blue. Dead. And he investigates the body and realizes that there's a bullet wound in the head. So
yeah, he was shot in the back of the head.
Right. And that is where the episode ends, with the insinuation, pretty much confirmation, that Brandon was murdered by somebody.
Brandon is dead. Yeah, somebody attached his body and then sent the boat back to the dock on autopilot so that they'd find him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So that was Garrett Patrick Peon playing Brandon. I don't know if we see him again in a flashback. We might.
I'm sure we do.
But this is the end of him in the continuous story anyway.
Right. Yeah. We might see his corpse again, but we don't hear him talk.
But he might be in one of the flashbacks where we dock people.
I'm willing to bet good money that he appears in like the handful, a couple episodes.
Oh yeah, because we still got to deal with like the story of like why did he die?
Right.
So
yes.
yeah, he's definitely we're gonna see him again, definitely.
Yeah.
Also in this episode, we had the return of the character of Carrie. Carrie played by Jessica Marie Brown. We met her in the very first episode, and we knew she was coming back in this episode. And I was waiting for her return. She was in like 1 second of a flashback, like when Percy was at the bar. So she didn't have any significant role. I've been waiting for her to come back because I knew she was going to return, and no, nothing significant happened with her. She's just... So
she didn't even get a line?
I mean, it was so fast. Like, they were just in the bar. Maybe, like, you could hear something come out of her mouth, but it was a frame or two. She was on the screen.
Well, that was enough to get her credited.
It was. So that was Percy's friend, Carrie, who was the one she sings with at the bar. I felt like we were going back to that character. I thought I remembered going back to that character. Nope, that was it. And let's see. Again, there wasn't any new characters. It was the same people.
Yeah.
Except for we met Patrick, and this is the only episode that Taylor Olson was in, so we don't see Patrick again.
Right.
Em's the only. She's running the doc
Hello,
show.
Taylor Olson. Goodbye, Taylor Olson.
It's kind of funny that we brought in another employee just for that scene, and then we don't see them ever again.
Yeah. I mean, we couldn't see M, who's the typical person that we see working there.
Yeah.
So we had to see somebody, but bringing in someone like Taylor Olson, who has so much...
why didn't we see a second employee here any other time?
Right. I mean, like, he's
there's dead bodies popping up all over the place on this dock. You'd think we'd see people working here.
Well, we will now.
But we're not going to see Taylor Olson again.
That's true. Fair enough.
But next week, who we are going to see?
Yes.
Reed Price.
Do we see Scott McCord next week, too? Or is that, like, the episode after?
I think it's the episode after, but I'm not positive. He's only in one episode, I'm pretty sure. I think it's episode 7. But, again, I don't know where we're going with the breakup of these episodes. But I do know that Reed Price is in all 3 of the final episodes.
And we're going to see Raskin again. Raskin's going to come back triumphantly for the next episode after missing out on this one.
I think he's in all the rest of the episodes.
Probably.
And so now we're going to get into the part of the story where we're getting back to the police. Yeah. And we have something new to investigate. And, of course, that is what's going on with Brandon. Why is he dead?
Yep.
Who killed him?
And I expect to see Reed Price carrying a baseball bat.
All about that story. I don't think that happens.
No, probably not. But he should.
No. So Reed Price is playing, I think his name's Detective Brooks.
Yeah.
I don't have that in front of me, but I think I recall that. And so we're at the point in the story where the mainland police are coming to take over.
Yeah.
And Reed's character is like leading that crew. He's like in charge. He's taking over the investigation. Because obviously the local cops have not handled any of this well. And now that we have another body, they're like, okay, we're going to come and clean up this show because what is going on that crazy island where people just keep dying?
Well, the first time was a suicide.
Yeah, but they didn't know it was like, they suspected it was a suicide. They were looking for her body.
Right.
No one ever came to, like, help them.
So they didn't care when it was a missing persons case. But they do care now that somebody has clearly been murdered. And they're going to care about Percy as well because there's obviously some connection here, right? Yeah.
We've come to the fact that there's some connection, something's happening. And we will learn by the end of the season that there is something they do know about already.
Yes.
You think they'd have sent people over here to investigate this stuff and be on top of it, but... I kind of think the Portland police are failing just as much as the island police are at this point.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Because they should have been on top of this whole situation from the beginning.
All right, so do we have anything else to say about this episode?
I think we covered it.
All right, we got 3 more episodes to go.
3 episodes full of Reed Price.
Yes, and we got
we're going to get to see more of Zach Faye as well.
Yep. And we got after these 3 episodes conclude, we got an interview with Donald Hang.
Yeah, who plays a character we haven't named yet. This is where we are.
Yeah, we won't name that character, but he is pretty important.
He's pretty important. Yeah.
But
yeah. Don't spoil the end of the show right now.
No. That's why we're holding...
Just in case anybody's watching along with us and you haven't seen the last 3 episodes yet.
So, yeah, one of the reasons why we're holding off on the interview is because it relates to the last episode of the season.
Yes, so after episode 8's discussed, then we're going to have an awesome interview to drop with him.
And then I'm not sure if we're covering this series again, but it's definitely taking a break.
Yes. I feel like maybe someday we'll go back and do season 1, but definitely not right away.
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
All right, so we would like to hear from you. What did you think of the podcast? What did you think of this episode? Stacie, we reached at?
I reached on Twitter X, Instagram, and Threads at TVN Coupon Talk.
If you like this video and want to support the channel, there are a number of ways to do so. You can follow me on Twitter at Core Productions. You can join one of my Core Productions Facebook pages. You can buy something from the Core Productions store on Zazzle. You can buy me a coffee. You can do a Core Productions membership for 99 cents a month. And of course, you can like, share, and comment on this video and of course, subscribing to my channel. This is Dave and Stacie from Core Productions signing off.